I think there's one thing that certainly everyone in this room can agree upon, and that's everyone, no matter where they live, should have an opportunity to live in quality, a community that they're proud to call home. And in my mind, that community incorporates quality housing near transportation opportunities with real access to quality transportation. All too often, I think, in these forums on transit-oriented development, we think about new communities or new transit development and what we can do to provide affordable housing opportunities in those areas, which is critical. Don't get me wrong, that is critical. But I would argue that that is really only half the picture of transit-oriented development. The other half of transit-oriented development is preserving existing quality housing that already exists near those transit stops. And that, I think, paints a complete picture of transit-oriented development and housing. The promise of improved mobility and access to transit often spurs new development, which is often a good thing for every community. But that new development, as Scott so eloquently noted this morning, can often lead, thank you Scott, can often lead to displacement, which leads to, ironically, it's kind of a cruel irony if you think about it, something we really didn't intend when we create these transit opportunities. The people who live there really have often required to leave where they've been because of economic displacement, something I'll also talk about. So it can be a mixed blessing if we are not careful in how we are doing transit and how we are thinking about preserving already existing affordable housing. And we otherwise risk the very real possibility that we will price people out of the homes they've lived in for years. Certainly not an intended consequence, but a real consequence, one that I'll talk about has real consequences for people in these areas. To lift this issue up, we partnered with Reconnecting America and AARP a year and a half ago to demonstrate that in 20 metro areas, including Denver, there are over 250,000 affordable HUD-assisted and 202 properties within 1/2 mile of existing mass transit. Reconnecting America was a tremendous partner in this effort. I think Allison is here. There's Allison. And Allison and Todd from my organization really worked hard to lift this issue up, to demonstrate how important it is to not forget about these families, over 40% of whom are aging adults, elderly households. And as the economy recovers, and it will recover, with demand to live near transit rising and with rental housing in more demand, it is really critical that we think about how we preserve this 250,000 housing units in these 20 metro areas. Whenever I talk about this, I get lost in the numbers, so I thought I would close with two stories about people who live near transit, people who live in this housing, one in Washington, D.C., and one in Minneapolis, and their stories. The Washington, D.C. story is a place called R Street Apartments. R Street Apartments is located near Logan Circle. It's located near DuPont Circle, and Scott got a 99 on walkscore.com. It's a fabulous walking community. That's the term for it. And we worked with the 5 voices of R Street, the tenant association, and a woman named Cassandra Witt. Cassandra Witt has lived at R Street Apartments for over 10 years, and right across from R Street Apartments are still today $500,000 condos that are going up near R Street and 14th Street, between R and 14th today. And when the grand opening of the R Street apartment complex came about, and I was talking to Cassandra, she said very eloquently, I thought, we lived here during the tough times. Why can't we live here during the good times? And I always think of Cassandra when I think about preservation of housing near transit. In our work with Reconnecting America, there was a woman named Rose. And Rose is an 83-year-old woman. She lives about 1/2 mile from 3 regular bus routes in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She lives in a HUD-assisted 202 apartment in Minneapolis. As she's gotten older, she's becoming increasingly reliant on public transit. She uses it now to grocery shop, she uses it to go meet friends, and she uses it to go to the orchestra hall where she likes to listen to classical music. Without that transit, she wouldn't be able to live life independently as she ages. So as we think about this work, as we think about preserving housing near transit, think about Cassandra Witt, think about Rose. Everyone here agrees that preserving housing near transit must be an option. But I think that preserving housing near transit has to be a must. It has to be something we all do all the time for housing near transit to become a reality. It is the other half of that picture that you're lifting up today, and I appreciate you allowing me time to speak about it today. Thank you.